It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
He's going to start snapping it and blowing bubbles. Just got to get a nail file out.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Podcasters, introduce yourselves.
Hey, guys. I am Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence, and joining us today is Jen Eman today. And Jen is going to help us unravel the mystery of Chat GPT.
I'm going to do my best, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So I think we asked earlier, but lost to the sands of time, what is the elevator pitch for Chat GPT?
Well, so
In your own words.
In my own words, yes. The technology that is used on Chat GPT has actually been around for a little while, several years. Back in 2020, OpenAI, who's the creator of Chat GPT, they released what they call GPT-3. And you could, even back then in 2020, you could write code against it and stuff, but it was kind of a early generation of it, of the GPT, and they've just refined it and fine-tuned it and trained it more and more and more. And Chat GPT is actually based off their GPT 3.5
Cool.
model, and it's a transform-based neural network. So it's a neural network that has been trained over time with different information, and then the reason why Chat GPT has kind of really made waves is because it sounds so realistic. It sounds like you're talking to a human, and you're not. But they've done a really good job of training it how to talk and communicate. Well, talk, I'm going to air quote that, and communicate in a way that is very fluent.
At least put together words that make it sound like a human.
Right. And how they did that is they had a bunch of people who were training it. So they would go through and people would ask it questions, and then they would select which was the most fluent, which one read the best of the answer.
Sure.
And over time, it learned how to, like, which versions to pick, which was the better version to pick.
So it was trained to pick the best version. It
yes.
didn't really, I mean, technically it's kind of learning, but it's also training, right?
Right. And as a matter of fact, so it's mostly trained, but it also like can make associations between the different things that it's been trained with, and that's kind of how it learns.
That's its magic.
Yeah.
So before we get too far away, what does GPT stand for?
Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
All right.
Why is it not GPTT then? Because AI is stupid.
Yeah,
it is still just a machine.
They asked it what its name should be.
Machine.
Cool. So, like, what are some, like, do we have any examples or anything, like, fun that we can share to talk about sort of where this is at and where it's going?
Where it's at, I mean, I can talk a little bit about where it's at.
Yeah.
Right? But, I mean, Jen, it's fair to say, like, right now, it's just another chatbot, right? It's a bit more clever than literally any other chatbot that we've had before, right?
Yep.
I mean, the chatbot on the AT&T website that helps me figure out why my daughter's bill is obscene isn't as eloquent or as advanced as ChatGPT. But at its heart, it's still just like a mix mash of chatbots and Google and whatever else. It can do a lot of things, but it can't do anything great. And so that's how I view it right now. It's kind of neat, but it is just a chatbot.
Well, and the thing about it, because it learns, right? So Chat GPT, an interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I've actually read some articles where people say, oh, I had it create a travel itinerary for me. But the thing is Chat GPT is based off of GPT-3, which was trained through 2021. So anything 2020, 2023, it doesn't have direct access to the internet there in order to get up-to-date live information. It's not searching the internet for you. Chat GPT is not. Now, Bing's integration is different because Microsoft has an exclusive contract with OpenAI for the GPT-3. So they don't have exclusivity to Chat GPT, but they do to the GPT-3 version, and they can make changes and they've integrated it into tons of their product. I mean, I swear every day you look and there's something, they're announcing something new that's using GPT-3 or their version of it. So that, when you're integrating with a browser, you're reading stuff on a browser that's obviously live, but Chat GPT is not. And so if you go ask it to make an itinerary for you, it doesn't have like current schedules. It doesn't know that there, if you want to travel to Turkey, that there were earthquakes, so you can't do that. It doesn't know that unless users have fed it that information.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, it is a chat bot, but it also takes information and it augments it's not database.
So it's still kind of being trained by the users.
Oh, yeah.
Like people complain if you say, no, this is a bad answer, it'll take that and spin it around and try again, right?
Yep, and so that's what a lot of people are like, oh, it gives you wrong answers, it does it, and that's absolutely true. There are a lot of instances where I've been using it, like even to generate code, I'm like, that's not right. And I'll correct it, but they do currently have like moderators that review all of these new information. I don't know if it's all of it. I honestly don't know if it's just some of it or how they determine, but they do have people that are reviewing them to try and minimize bad information that goes in there because, yeah, I mean, you could tell it anything. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was asking it, what is OpenAI Codex, which is, the product that OpenAI, the company that created Chat GPT, made so that people can program against their GPT AIs. And it told me it was an RPG. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I even asked, I said, I thought it was, this other thing. And they're like, it says no. That's not what it is. And I said, according to OpenAI's website, and I posted the website, and it said, oh, you're right, I was wrong. And then the next time I asked it, like the next day, it had all sorts of really great information about what OpenAI Codex was. So I corrected it, but at some point in time, somebody had told it the wrong information, and that was what it was.
That's hilarious.
To other people. Yeah. I'm like, this is your own parent company's, product.
And it's surprising how fast it was corrected, right?
Yes.
Like it's either a large team of people doing things or something else, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of sort of mixing in corrections and making some of those things, we kind of had glimpses of people, being evil, right?
Right. Well, and I think, honestly, that's great because people are exposing flaws. I mean, if this stuff wasn't in the media, that
right.
people are able to do this, we wouldn't know, but people are still trying to do it, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's great. Find all those flaws, point out all that stuff. I mean, it's really just like the world is the QA doing pen testing, right?
Right.
It's so I think it's great that all this stuff is happening, that people say, yeah, we can trick it into answering these questions that it's not supposed to answer. Like
Right.
Chat GPT, they've tried to put all this stuff into place so that it doesn't give, harmful answers. Supposed to say, I can't give you that information, and here's some resources that you can go to get help, kind of stuff.
Right.
Like,
Here's the hotline for.
yeah. But people, or, where do I hide the bodies when I don't, like that kind of stuff. It's not supposed to answer those, but people have been able to trick it into doing that. And I think that's great that we find that stuff out now.
Right.
But that's why it's in the media so much, because it's, all these people are like, look how terrible it is. I'm like,
look how young it is. It's
Yeah.
only on like version 3.5, right?
Oh my gosh, do you know how many curse words you can train a toddler to say if you tried?
Yeah, that's true. You could fill an entire daycare with nothing but pirates
Right.
I mean, people have been training birds to swear for eons also. So
Right.
so training a chatbot to do it should be a piece of cake.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially with the technology that people have, you could create a bot that spams it, right?
Right.
Because and then if you spam it with enough of the right information or the wrong information, however then
I mean, it's training, right?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I actually think it's really funny. I was reading the other day. I don't know if you've seen this, but so Microsoft released a limited version of Bing with ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where you have like a chat feature, and I think it's actually really cool. The stuff that you can do with it, and the stuff you can ask it, and how much more intuitive it is. Like you don't necessarily have to really pinpoint the search terms. Like being
You're
a
taking away
developer,
all my developer skills, though, that I've
Right,
honed
right.
my Google and my Bing search capabilities.
Right. And now it's, making that so much easier. So just anybody can do it, right?
Right.
I say bring them on. But it was funny. So people have been trying to also, I'm going to use the term jailbreak
Sure.
this version of it, right? Because that's what they've been calling
way back to Apple 1.0 or whatever, right?
Right. And so there have been a bunch of people who have gone in and been able to get the version of ChatGPT that's running in Bing to respond in such a way that it sounds like it's threatening them, like I will destroy you, kind of stuff. And I think, and then you look at all the comments, like if you go on Twitter and you see people posting this stuff, you look at all the comments and stuff that they're commenting on, and people are like, oh my gosh, it's vindictive, it's it's afraid of you, and I'm like, it's a machine. It doesn't feel fear. It's not vindictive. It's been trained to respond that way. And so it's really interesting. Like people, especially people who don't understand how the technology works, it's really easy because it sounds so human.
Because it puts the words together in the right order, and it doesn't sound like a computer doing dumb computer English or whatever you want to call it, right?
There's no beeps or bops.
Right.
You trying to say it.
That's the thing that's so freaky about it, is that like I use the example of the AT&T chat bot on their website, right? Or any
customer service chatbot, right?
Any customer service chatbot, or any even like the voice to when you call and you have press 5 for this, or just say what you want.
Right.
So that's where this stuff is going to be really cool, I think, is like making that stuff actually sound like a person.
Right.
That's going to be amazing. And then if you can train it on all of your internal documentation and libraries and everything else, that's like, if we're talking about jailbreaking this stuff, that's where you're going to jailbreak it. You're going to feed it the wrong document. Somebody's going to be able to ask it the right question, and it's going to give you, salary information for your company because you trained it accidentally to say, here's,
Chad makes $5 an hour.
Yes.
Wow,
or something like that.
I know. When was the last time you made $5 an hour, Jen?
Never. My
Really?
very first job, straight out of when I was 15, was at McDonald's, and I made $5.25.
Wow, I started at 475. You were making the big bucks.
Yep.
Okay,
That's
sorry for the diversion.
because I opted to do the morning shift, so I had to be there by 5:30, and so you got an extra 25 cents.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
All right.
Mhm.
See, now we throw Peter off. He's got his whole prepared outline.
Well, no,
All of a sudden, we're
just,
talking about making McMuffins at 5 a.m.
I'm trying to decide whether I tell you my minimum wage to show how old I am or not, right? Because mine was $3.35, I think, when I started. So, and that felt like a lot of money at the time. But, you know.
A lot of comic books.
So, Jen, you'd mentioned earlier about using Chat GPT to do your job for you, right? Or
Yeah.
write some code for you or something?
Yeah, just playing around, because that was, being a software developer. A lot of the buzz that caught my ear was, oh, this is going to make developers obsolete. It's going to be able to write all your code for you. And I was like, really? Sure. I don't know about all of it, but it can write code, and actually it can do a pretty good job. And one of the things that I really, really like about asking ChatGPT to write code is that it puts little explanations in there.
It comments its code?
Yeah, it comments the code.
Wow.
And it has a little summary at the bottom that says, I used this, library in, so I primarily do Microsoft products, so C# is the primary language I write in right now. And so it'll say, I'll say, write a program to, take input from a website and store it in a database using Entity Framework in C#6, right?
Yeah.
And it'll do it. But one of the things that I noticed, because that was one of the things, I'm like, I don't know, let's just throw some easy stuff out there and see. And what it fed back to me was it would work, for sure would work, but it was not scalable. So, we work on enterprise level systems most of the time. And if you're using that to, I don't know, create an endpoint, that code that it created for me to create an endpoint that is going to say import data, the way it did it was so inefficient that, I've seen that specific code, I've refactored and fixed that kind of code because it actually brought the DB server to its knees.
It's spinning up lots of connections.
That it ate up all the memory.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it would totally work. And it would totally work probably pretty well in a small scale.
Especially in
QA,
it wasn't
scalable. And if you're not a developer, if with that experience,
right,
you might be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to copy and paste this in there. And then you run into issues later, right? So there's some of this stuff that maybe over time, maybe in 5 years, 3, I don't know, this stuff changes so darn fast. It might be sooner than we think. It'll get better and better. But right now, we're not quite there yet from the stuff that I've seen.
No, I think I agree. It's going to get better. And I think it's going to be integrated into our development tools, right? It's not going to write code for us, but I use IntelliJ, and IntelliJ will generate a lot of templates for me. And
sure.
I think it's going to be amazing to help me generate maybe smarter repository patterns or smarter controllers, smarter APIs that might be able to do that.
Well, and I don't know about you, but some of the stuff, they're always adding, we call it syntactic sugar, right? In the crux, it's the same kind of features, but you can just write the code easier, and the compiler does all the work for you, right? It knows what to do. And it's always changing. They're always giving you new syntactic sugar. Like in C#6, there's a time-only field and a date-only field, where it used to always be date time, and you had to just cut it off and use the part you wanted if you wanted to only have time or whatever. But now you have these new fields, but in the background, it's still doing the date time but what's nice is with the IntelliSense and stuff, and as a matter of fact, Microsoft has already integrated into Visual Studio GPT-3 in its I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember last summer talking to some developers going, man, the IntelliSense is so crazy, scary accurate. Like, I'm able to use it more and more because I'm like, oh, yeah, that is what I'm trying to do, and just tab and it completes the line for you. But so it's already actually in a lot of the tools that I use. And like if people use Git's Copilot, it's a code generation, that's GPT-3.
Okay.
Actually, it's 3.5, I think. So, I mean, it is already out there in a lot of these things, and you might not even know it. Like, I didn't know we were using that my IntelliSense was using GPT to do it.
It's funny you mentioned IntelliSense, because I remember when IntelliSense was first coming online and stuff, and just how excited everybody was.
Yeah,
just because, I don't have to memorize how to type stuff anymore. It just fills it in for me.
Right.
And we've been using that for decades, right?
Right. Well, and I think that's how it's going to be. In 10 years, we're going to look back at this and think, how did we ever live without this?
Right.
But what I keep telling people, go ahead, Chad. You keep trying to talk, and I just talk right over you.
I know, that's totally fine. Listen, Sarah. All right. So, no, I'm a Java guy, right? So I don't have IntelliSense, but like our tools are very, very similar. So it's going to be a while for us to get Chat GPT or any GPT technology, but it's already at the point where like not even just the keywords, but like the variables, right? Like I really can now focus on development, and I think GPT, like the tokenization patterns that they use under the covers for this stuff, it's just going to make that kind of stuff better and better and better over time, where you're really just going to be modeling business problems, and all your work is going to be spent in service layers and not necessarily the commodity IT nonsense that we do, right? Like it's going to say, there's going to be a point at which it'll be like, oh, you're trying to write an OAuth authentication pattern. All right, do you want me to just pull this pattern down? You want to implement this? Cool. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to get to the point where it's going to be like, oh, you're trying to sell shoes online. Well, here's how you should, maybe it can help you design the schema a little bit. Go ahead.
Right. Well, so I asked it to do, like, give me a solution for, what are some solutions I can use for whatever business. It was just a generic business. I don't even remember what I said. I could look back in my history. That's another thing that's really cool about ChatGPT is it saves.
Oh,
you can delete them if you want, but it saves your past discussions so you can go back and re-reference them. But it did give me a huge list of all sorts of different technologies I could consider in order to implement what I was asking it to implement. So, but what I keep telling people is it's a good starting point. You can't just say, oh, okay, and then use that, at least not yet. You use it as a starting point to give you, a direction to go into. You're like, I don't know, I want to use React and with this on my back end and that. And, it can help point you in a direction to help solve the problem. But you still have to know how to architect it. You still have to know how to put everything together and know which ones are the right ones or not. But I love the fact that you can go ask it these questions because it's so hard to stay up to date on new technology.
Right.
Especially when you are at a company where you're building or you're maintaining things that is using a very specific technology, and that eats up all your time, and then you have kids and you have after school activities. It's really hard to try and stay up to date. And I really like the idea that you can just say, hey, I have this problem to solve. Give me a starting point for my research kind of thing, so that you can just fast track getting those answers.
That makes a lot of sense. And sounds like a good way to think about it, not thinking about like, oh, Chat GPT is going to take my job, or Chat GPT, whatever.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, Chatbot 1 is going to, do all my coding for me or whatever. It's unlikely to ever do that, right?
Well, as developers though, like I've been doing this for 20 years now. How many times have we heard such and such is going to replace developers, right?
Always.
offshoring was going to replace us a long time ago, and I'm busier now than I ever have been. And then it was low code solutions are going to revolutionize the inventory or industry, and we're never going to have, and now it's AI is going to make my job obsolete. And God, I just hope one of these people would be right, because I'd love to just tend bar. I would love to just be a bartender. Yeah. It would accelerate my retirement, and I could not be happier.
It's very similar
similar
to self-driving cars, right? Or flying cars for that matter. The promise of that has always been there, but the technology continues to not be up to the task yet.
Oh my gosh, how wonderful would it be if you could just chat with Chat GPT and figure out solutions while your car drives you to work, and you don't even
have a discussion. Oh, that would be cool.
Wait, you guys don't write code on your ride into work? That's what that whole laptop stand on my center console is for.
Well, fortunately, my drive to work has gotten a lot shorter.
Yeah, mine would just walk down the stairs.
I've got a thing, right?
All right.
Now, can we talk really quick about this is not specifically about Chat GPT, but the way the media covered it, right? So this is my favorite part of this, because it still seems like just a few months old, right? It still seems relatively fresh.
Right.
But
Well, it
immediately,
is, though.
Yeah, it is.
Chat GPT was only released in November of 2022.
Oh, so I was accurate. That's
Yeah,
rare.
it was the end of November of 2022. So it really has only been a couple months. It's crazy to think about it, because so much has happened in that time frame.
Yeah,
Right.
but my favorite part of this cycle has been the initial coverage is it's going to revolutionize the industry. It's going to change everything. It's going to, and then literally 3 months later, now the stories are, why is everybody getting so worked up about this thing? From the same publications. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Maybe
it was the 20 articles that you wrote in the month of November and December that got us excited for it.
Well, one of the things that really amazed me was how quickly there were classes, online classes available on how to use Chat GPT to do your job better.
Nice.
It's only been a couple months, and I bet you could go out there and you could find a good half dozen or more from various institutes that offer online courses and stuff, and they have on
they've got it covered already.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, that was fast. Maybe it was generated by ChatGPT.
It's generated. So I was reading, speaking of generated, I was reading about the game that ChatGPT generated that already existed, but somebody said that it came up with a brand new game or something like that, and it's poorly worded, but just kind of the things that are making news, and then oh, you mean this thing that already exists? Okay. Or that thing that already exists. Kind of some of the down to earth aspects of Chat GPT and some of the other AI things. And Chat GPT is not the only one, right? Aren't there other AIs doing drawing or something like that?
Well, so I think there's definitely a bunch of those out there. I know OpenAI has DALL-E, DALL-E, and they have a DALL-E 2 now. And that one generates, I was actually playing with it right before this.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool, but also kind of cringy how these pictures can be created.
I think it's kind of the same way with the chat, right?
Here's
cool,
the thing,
but
though.
cringy.
Well, it's the image generation from AI isn't AI coming up with a concept, and you give it hey, draw me a picture of the president in the style of The Simpsons, right? So it goes and it cribs, the Simpsons art style, right? So pre-existing art over here, and then probably a couple of photographers with a picture of a president over here, and it puts them together and it figures it out. And that in and of itself is really cool, but it's still lifting work from other developers or other artists, right?
Yes.
And I've even seen it where there was a DALL-E generated an image, and it looked amazing. It was like this steampunk thing with Star Wars characters, but no credit really to the creators of the original source images. And in fact, it actually had like this weird where it was trying to like white out the watermark of the original one of the original source images.
Yeah.
And so I think the technology is really cool, and I think the output is really great. But the fact that they don't give credit, I mean, because that DALL-E stuff works similar to Chat GPT, where you have to train it, you tokenize it, and everything else. Just your tokens now are source images, and they're not, words and phrases and relationships between the two.
Well, kind of they are, because they take the image and they tag it with a word or set of words, and then they build the relationships between the words, but the image is associated with those, and that's like the crossover. Yeah,
and it's one thing if it's just all textual and it's like folks training whatever. It's another thing if you're going to deviantart.com and downloading some source material and throwing it in their tokenization process and not crediting creators, but saying you made something new. Like,
yeah, it's a whole new realm of like
copyright infringement.
Yes, or like artists have been struggling, I think, for many years with people pirating their work.
It's making intellectual property a challenge, that's for sure.
Yes,
right?
Yes, and this is just throws a whole new beast in there. As a matter of fact, so since we're on the topic, I just read an article today that was published like 5 hours ago that Microsoft announced GPT-4, and rumors. I didn't read the actual announcement from Microsoft, but rumors are that it's going to have GPT 3.5, like Chat GPT, with images. So it's like the next step up. So the text part of it is going to be even better and do it and easier, but it's going to include images as well. And so I'm like, if that's true, then I mean, it's just going to compound that specific issue. And how do they, if they're going and scraping the internet for images, right, in order to do that, how there's so many places that have pirated images, that have stolen creative content and put it on their site. Like how, even if you were to say, OpenAI, I want you to go and give credit to the original artist, even trying to figure out who the original artist was, is, so my husband, he likes to play around with Photoshop and do certain things. And he had created a couple images back when he was in college that ended up, he had posted it somewhere, and he found it being printed on T-shirts, just like 5 years ago. And he's like, that's mine. I mean, it was unedited. He's like, I made that like 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's being printed on T-shirts somewhere, and he's not getting any credit for it. But how would any creator of an imaging AI be able to even get back to who the original creator was? That's almost an impossible task. Well,
maybe AI can help us with that task.
No doubt.
Getting back to the original creators of things instead of other things, because they know where all the scraping comes from, right? It's a challenge for sure.
But even the things that they're scraping it from, probably, a lot of them will have pirated it without any credit to the art.
But your husband could go in and correct it, and then slowly update the feedback for that particular piece of art could slowly get corrected. But
yeah, we just have to create a bot that'll spam it. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine.
So creating AI to spam AI to break or fix AI. Yes, it's all coming true.
Turtles all the way.
So those are kind of the far out there kind of things that we're talking about, and we've talked about some of the practical things. Have we covered all the practical things that this is going to help us with?
I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked about music yet. I mean, it's text, it's vision, it's I still think of it as very toy-like, right? Like it's not quite utilitarian yet. My daughter uses it for homework. That's great. But it's the same use case that we've been talking about, right? Like, nice little starting point, not a great, it's not going to produce a finished product. And I think a lot of the examples that we've read about on the internet are relatively contrived, right? Like they walk you through. They're trying to break it right now, which is only probably helping OpenAI by giving them this ridiculous data set of a bunch of things that don't work. So and so as developers, we kind of know, like, I don't necessarily know how to make something work the first time. I just know like 10 ways that it's not going to work, and the 11th is probably going to be the solution.
Right.
And that's what we're doing for OpenAI right now. We're giving them a lot of input on things that don't work. I tried to get help from Chat GPT on sports betting, and it will not help you with sports betting at all. Like, even asking, like, guessing the American League, like, hey, who's going to win the American League Central right now? It's the Twins, obviously, but what's the record going to be? 162-0, probably. But if it's not that, then what are the other teams going to, what's the over/under of the other teams?
This is Chad's constant starting point for the Twins. They always start out with a 162-0 season and take the Central. And so, for listeners out there, Chad may or may not be right.
Yeah. So if you ever interact with Chat GPT, please God, don't put money on my recommendation, or do.
Only do it, and then if it wins, and they have to share it with you. Like, if they actually...
I should do that. That's actually genius, Eamon. I might take a cut.
A new business model was formed.
Yeah, hang on a second.
But so for now, we've talked about practical, and it's sort of like in the infant stages, a great place to start with things. It'll do some of the simpler coding things, but you got to watch it because it's not going to do it enterprise thinking. It's going to do like, we'll just open as many connections to the database as we want, and we won't try to optimize anything. We'll just go crazy.
Well, and I think I even asked it with that. I'm like, wouldn't using, add range instead of looping through and adding be better? Yes, it would be more efficient to do. Like, it knew that, but it wasn't what it recommended to begin with.
It knew it once you asked it.
Yes, and maybe that's the trick. Like, eventually we'll just be people who know how to ask GPT for the right thing.
Oh, there you go.
An AI for the right thing.
Or even like, I could see it being deployed almost as microservices, like industry-specific microservices, right? So like, I don't know, like if you want to solve network issues, well, here's an AI that exists and has an entire database of thousands of measured like conditions, metrics, and you deploy it out there, and it does exactly what it does today. Here's a bunch of solutions to problems that you don't even know exist yet.
Have you turned it off and turned it back on again yet? Okay, let's start there.
Yeah, starting there, but also...
Is that what you're suggesting, Clippy AI?
Well, I guess in a way, but like more like an agent-based AI specific to different applications, right? So, I mean, we think in the IT world about these things all the time, like for IT problems, but apply this to like meteorology, right? And I'm like, it's not like they're not right now. I'm not a meteorologist. I don't have that skill set, but training a system like this to solve those problems, I'm sure isn't that far off. And I'm sure it's just going to increase accuracy and give us an extra 5 minutes a day. And at the end of the day, that's, that translates into more time at happy hour, right? And
right.
Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, I like the prospect of having to spend less time figuring out the right syntax for things and more time problem solving. Because I like puzzles. That's my favorite part, is solving those problems and figuring out those puzzles. And when I'm just like, I don't know, what was the word for this, or what is it? How many inputs do I need, and what are they supposed to be, and object type? Like, I'm looking forward to that part of it. Is not.
How do I do a join in link and a group by so that I get the results in the order that I want? I know exactly what I want. I know what it should look like. I can't remember the syntax, and it's going to take me 4 Google searches and 3 tries before I finally come up with the right syntax. Not saying how my morning went, but just like I know it does this. I know it knows how to do this, and nobody on the internet can tell me how right now.
So wouldn't it be kind of cool, like in your IDE, like in Visual Studio or something, if you had like that? Because, they're being with the chat sidebar. If you had like a chat sidebar that you just ask the questions there, that'll be more, I don't know, I guess it's almost like Stack Overflow on demand. But we know, it's funny, somebody asked me about that. Well, isn't it just kind of like, searching in Stack Overflow? I'm like, the problem though, the difference, one of the biggest difference, like if you were to search for something, you end up on Stack Overflow and there's like 6 answers.
Right.
And then like a bunch of people say, no, this is the best answer.
Yeah.
Chat GPT is kind of doing, it's doing that in the background, but you don't see all those other options. You don't see how it ranked or how many, like this was the best option here and you don't get to see all the comments on why the other ones aren't right, or, oh, you forgot to take into account that. You just get, here's how to do it.
You only get the first place answer. You don't get the 4th place answer that was maybe more correct for your situation.
Right.
And I do love those. I love the wrong answers almost as much as I like the right ones because, well, I don't, because my idea is usually one of the wrong answers. And then I like seeing, it actually makes me feel stupid. Well, not stupid, but it makes me feel silly sometimes reading the original question and then being like, oh, all right, before I scroll down, I'll think about it and then I'll see my answer. And somebody's like, well, that is insane. Why would you ever do that? What are you doing? Why don't you, just 10 bar? And then I close my laptop and
go to happy hour.
There you go. I was waiting for somebody else to complete my sandwich. Yeah.
So where are we going? When are we going to get there? Anybody know?
Well, I think it's moving so fast. I mean, just the sheer number of browsers that have come out with with a chat feature powered by
since November.
AI. Yeah. Well, not even since November, since like early February when Microsoft said, hey, guess what? We're integrating this into Bing. I actually was researching for a different talk I did on this topic. And as I'm researching it, like I'll look and I'll find stuff. And then the next day it says, Microsoft announced that on Wednesday they're going to announce something, right? And then Google announced that 2 days later and this thing, they're going to announce something. And so I'm like having to keep going back. And then it's like, oh, Opera is using Chat GPT powered. And then Brave is using AI, not GPT, but some other AI to do a chat feature. And so like everybody's like, oh yeah, we're doing it too. And so it's such it is a race to see who gets the best implementation and who gets, so because you have so many players trying to perfect it or trying to be the one, I think it's gonna move so fast.
There's a lot of brains pushing this along pretty quickly, right?
A lot of people smarter than me.
I think you make a good point also that like Chat GPT is the one in the news from November, but it's really not even close to the only one out there, right?
Sure.
There's so many others out there that aren't making headlines right now, but might make headlines next week, right?
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I mean, there's going to be a lot of them. I remember a couple of years ago, we were all excited, like really excited about cryptocurrency. And at the time there was a few, and then it grew and grew and grew. And now it imploded because everybody realized it was snake oil. I don't necessarily think this is as bad as that big wave was, right? This does kind of feel more like an actual like the internet coming along again, or something like that. It feels it has
something
that,
productive coming out of it, right?
yeah, it has that tinge to it, right? And but it was just recent that we were literally just as excited about cryptocurrency and NFTs and everything around that.
Right.
I was excited.
And I mean, I learned about AI in college when I went to college.
Yeah.
And
so
that's been a week or two since I've done that.
Stanley Kubrick taught us everything we need to know about AI. And basically it's be careful.
Right.
So
yeah.
So, Chad, any parting thoughts?
I guess for me, it's just, I'm excited for it to make my job. Here's like as optimistic as I can possibly get is that this is going to make my job slightly easier, right? And that's it, right? It's going to make my job slightly easier. I'm jealous that it exists now, and not like when I had to do homework, right? Because it actually does seem to help my daughter quite a bit. And that's it. Like it's going to shave, a half hour off of my development off my SDLC. But like we talked last week, right? Or maybe it was the week before, or maybe it wasn't even us. I have a lot of chats, but like if you make a developer, so I'm talking about it from the context of a developer. If a feature takes me 2 hours to write instead of 3 hours, which I think ChatGPT might help me with.
Sure.
Well, great, right? I still have to QA that, and maybe it'll help there. And then I have to get it through our CI/CD pipeline, and I got to fix errors, and I got to get it promoted, and I've got to represent the change at a change meeting. I got to do all this other process. So me being 33% more productive doesn't really help. But I think it will get there. So
it'll help, right?
It'll help a little bit.
I'm interested.
Go ahead, Jen.
I'm interested to see how it's going to play out, because if you think about it, like you go back to like the beginning of the internet and the browsers we had available at that time, right? The first browsers out there that everybody was all a buzz about and everybody was using was a Netscape Navigator and,
Mosaic.
Yeah, like they were the first ones, and there was a lot of buzz around that, right, at the beginning, but they're not the main players that have a foothold right now. They're not the people who did it the best. So just because ChatGPT is the first one to make waves doesn't mean it's going to be in 2 years or in 3 years the one that becomes really the one that changes everybody's lives, right?
Sure.
It's a starting point, and we're all talking about it now. But I think people have a tendency to, well, what do they say? The cutting edge is the bleeding edge. So let the other people fall on that sword, and I'll learn what not to do and make it better and step over them, kind of thing.
There you go. Yep.
So I'm interested to see how it plays out with, Google's Bard and all this stuff that's coming and moving forward with it. Like in 2 years, or even in a year from now, who are going to be the main players or the big players or the up and coming? Those are probably the ones you need to watch out for.
Or who
it's
is
really
trained
hard, I think, for people to be the first ones out the gate with something to stay on top.
I like that. So AI is the next browser wars. You've heard it here first.
I do believe that when Microsoft announced that they were integrating ChatGPT into Bing, I think the phrase was actually the AI wars have begun.
There you go.
They called it out themselves.
They knew it. All right. Well, you heard it here second then. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I think this was a great discussion, and I learned a lot about ChatGPT and where things are going. So it's time to say goodbye, everybody.
We'll have to do one in like a year from now and see how right or wrong we were.
We'll put it on the calendar. That's awesome.
Sounds good.
All right. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.